classroom was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet where you could hear pencils scratching on paper and the soft hum of the old ceiling fan. Sunlight came in through the tall windows and fell across rows of desks. Students sat in their seats, half listening, half waiting for the bell. For most of them, math class was just another subject to get through. In the back row, near the window, sat a black student named Daniel. He was not loud. He did not try to get attention. He came to school on time, finished his work, and kept to himself. Many teachers saw him as just another average student. Some did not notice him at all. Daniel liked math. He liked how numbers made sense when the world did not. At home, after helping his mother with chores, he would open old books his uncle gave him. The books were not from his grade. They were much harder. Daniel did not tell anyone about this. Math was his quiet place. At the front of the room stood the teacher, Mr. Harris. He had been teaching for many years. He believed he could quickly judge what students could or could not do. That day, he was in a playful mood. He wrote a long and complex math problem on the board. It was a problem meant for students several grades higher. Harris turned to the class with a small smile. Some students leaned back in their chairs, already bored. Others whispered to each other. Then Mr. Harris looked toward the back of the room, toward Daniel. "Daniel," he said, his voice louder than before, "why don't you come up here and try to solve this?" A few students laughed quietly. They thought it was a joke. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He looked around the room. Some faces were curious, some were amused. Some were waiting for him to fail. Daniel did not laugh. He did not smile. He slowly closed his notebook and stood up. His legs felt heavy, but he walked forward. Every step felt longer than the last. He could hear his heart beating in his ears. At the board, Daniel looked at the problem. It was hard, very hard. But it was not new to him. He had seen similar problems before, late at night under a dim light at his kitchen table. Mr. Harris crossed his arms, still smiling. He expected Daniel to freeze or guess. He expected the class to laugh again. Daniel picked up the marker. His hand shook a little, but he took a deep breath. He remembered what his mother always said: "Take your time. Do your best." The room became quieter. The laughter stopped. Daniel wrote the first line slowly, then the second. His writing was neat, careful. He did not rush. Some students leaned forward. They did not understand everything he wrote, but they could tell something was different. This was not a guess. This was real work. Mr. Harris's smile faded just a little. He stepped closer to the board. Daniel continued step by step. He paused once, erased a small part, and corrected it. Then he went on. Minutes passed, no one spoke. Even the ceiling fan seemed louder now. Daniel finished the last line and set the marker down. He turned around and waited. His face was calm, but inside he felt unsure. He wondered if he had made a mistake. He wondered if the laughter would come back. Mr. Harris stared at the board. He checked the steps carefully once. Then again. He frowned, then straightened. The bell had not rung yet. The class was still waiting. And in that moment, something unexpected was about to happen. Something that would change how everyone in that room saw Daniel, and how they saw themselves. The lesson that began as a joke was no longer a joke at all. The room stayed silent after Daniel stepped back from the board. He stood near his desk, his hands resting at his sides. He did not look proud or scared. He simply waited. The answer was already written. There was nothing more he could add. Mr. Harris cleared his throat. He looked at the board again, slower this time. He followed each step with his finger. The class watched his face closely. Some students held their breath. Others exchanged quiet looks. No one laughed now. Finally, Mr. Harris spoke. His voice sounded different, less playful than before. This is correct," he said. A wave of surprise moved through the room. A few students whispered, "No way." One student near the front slowly started to clap, then stopped, unsure if it was allowed. Daniel felt a warm feeling rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He returned to his seat without saying a word. Mr. Harris turned back to the board. He erased part of the problem, then paused. He looked at Daniel again, this time with real attention. "Class," he said, "let's take a moment." The teacher admitted he did not expect that result. He said the problem was advanced and not meant as part of the lesson. His words were careful, but the meaning was clear. Something had gone wrong earlier, and now it was being fixed. Daniel sat quietly. His hands rested on his notebook. He felt many things at once: relief and a little sadness. He wished this moment had come without the laughter first. After class, students gathered their bags more slowly than usual. Some looked at Daniel with new eyes. A few nodded at him. One student whispered, "That was amazing." Daniel gave a small smile but said nothing. As the room emptied, Mr. Harris asked Daniel to stay for a moment. The teacher closed the door and leaned against his desk. The classroom felt smaller now, more personal. "I owe you an apology," Mr. Harris said. "I should not have put you on the spot like that." Daniel listened quietly. He did not interrupt. He had learned long ago that speaking calmly often said more than arguing. Harris asked Daniel where he learned math like that. Daniel explained in simple words how he studied at home, how he enjoyed solving hard problems, how math made him feel confident. He spoke softly, but his words were clear. The teacher nodded slowly. He realized how much he had missed. He realized how quickly he had judged. "I see now that I was wrong," Mr. Harris said. "Very wrong." Daniel thanked him and picked up his bag. As he walked out of the classroom, he felt taller, somehow lighter. The hallway was loud again, filled with voices and footsteps, but inside Daniel felt calm. Word spread fast through the school. By lunch, many students were talking about what happened in math class. Some were surprised. Some were inspired. Some felt embarrassed for laughing earlier. Daniel sat with his friends, eating quietly. He did not brag. He did not repeat the story. He just listened. That afternoon, a counselor called Daniel to the office. She had heard what happened and wanted to learn more about him. She asked about his interests, his goals, and his favorite subjects. For the first time, an adult at school asked him what he wanted for his future. Daniel answered honestly. He said he wanted to learn more. He wanted challenges. He wanted to grow. The counselor smiled and said there were programs that could help him. Advanced classes, math clubs, opportunities Daniel never knew were possible. As Daniel walked home later that day, the sun was low in the sky. He thought about the moment at the board. He thought about the laughter, the silence, and the change that followed. He knew one thing for sure. That day was not just about math. It was about being seen, and what happened next would open doors Daniel never imagined before. The next week felt different for Daniel. When he walked into math class, the room no longer felt invisible to him. Students glanced at him in a new way. Some smiled. Some looked curious. A few still looked unsure, as if they were trying to understand what had happened. Mr. Harris greeted the class more seriously now. He spoke slower and watched his students more closely. When Daniel raised his hand, the teacher noticed. When Daniel stayed quiet, the teacher noticed that too. During one lesson, Mr. Harris asked a question that was harder than usual. Before, he might have called on the same students again and again. This time, he looked around the room and then looked at Daniel. "Would you like to try?" he asked without joking. Daniel nodded and answered from his seat. His explanation was clear and simple. The teacher smiled and thanked him. There was no laughter, only listening. At lunch, 2 students Daniel barely knew sat near him. One of them said, "I didn't know you were that good at math." Daniel shrugged and said, "I just practice a lot." The students nodded, respectful now. The moment felt small, but to Daniel, it meant a lot. Later that day, Daniel was called to the main office again. This time, the school principal was there. She spoke kindly and asked him about his interests. Daniel explained his love for math and problem solving. He told her how he studied on his own at home. The principal listened carefully. She said the school had advanced math opportunities, but sometimes students were not placed correctly. She admitted that mistakes happened. Then she said something that surprised Daniel. "We want to support you," she said. "You deserve challenges." She explained that Daniel could be tested for higher-level classes. She also mentioned math competitions and special programs. Daniel felt excited but nervous. He had never imagined himself in those spaces before. When Daniel told his mother that evening, she became very quiet. Then she smiled and hugged him. She said she always believed in him, even when others did not see his talent. She reminded him to stay humble and kind. The next days were busy. Daniel took placement tests and met new teachers. Some classes were harder than anything he had done before. At first, he felt unsure again. The work was fast. The pace was different. Some students had more confidence. But Daniel remembered the moment at the board. He remembered staying calm under pressure. He used the same focus now. In one advanced class, the teacher asked students to solve a difficult problem in groups. Daniel listened first. Then he shared an idea. The group paused, then tried his method. It worked. One student said, "That was smart." Daniel smiled quietly. Still, not everything was easy. A few students doubted him. One whispered, he probably just got lucky that day. Daniel heard it, but he did not react. He knew proving himself once was not enough. He had to keep showing his effort. After school, Daniel stayed late to practice. He asked questions. He made mistakes. He learned from them. Teachers began to notice his dedication, not just his talent. One afternoon, Mr. Harris stopped Daniel in the hallway. He said he had been thinking a lot about that day in class. He told Daniel that moment changed him as a teacher. He said he was learning to listen more and assume less. Daniel thanked him. Hearing that felt just as important as solving the problem. Slowly, the school environment shifted. Teachers talked more about fairness. Students talked more about respect. Daniel was not the only one who benefited, but he was part of the reason things changed. Daniel understood now that moments like that did not just change one day. They changed paths, and his path was only beginning. As the weeks passed, Daniel's life began to fill with new routines. His days were longer now. Some mornings started earlier and some afternoons ended later. Advanced classes moved fast, and the work demanded focus. Daniel sometimes felt tired, but he never felt alone in his effort. In his new math class, the room felt different from before. Students asked questions freely. The teacher encouraged discussion instead of silence. Daniel sat near the middle now, no longer hiding in the back. He listened carefully and spoke when he felt ready. One day, the teacher introduced a complex problem and asked if anyone wanted to explain a solution at the board. The room waited. Daniel hesitated for a moment, then raised his hand. His heart beat faster as he stood up, but this time there was no fear, only focus. He explained each step slowly, making sure everyone could follow. When he finished, the teacher thanked him and said his explanation helped the whole class. Several students nodded. Daniel returned to his seat, feeling steady. Outside of class, Daniel joined a small math club that met after school. At first, he felt out of place. Many students had been there for years. They spoke confidently and worked quickly. Daniel stayed quiet during the first meeting, watching and learning. During the second meeting, a challenge problem was shared. The group struggled. Daniel studied the problem closely and saw a pattern. His voice was soft when he shared his idea, but the group listened. Together they solved it. That moment built trust. The club members began asking Daniel what he thought. He did not rush answers. He asked questions too. The group grew stronger because everyone learned from each other. At home, Daniel's mother noticed changes in him. He seemed more confident, more open. He talked about school in ways he never had before. She listened with pride but reminded him to rest and take care of himself. One evening, Daniel helped his younger cousin with homework. He explained math patiently, just as his teachers did with him now. His cousin smiled when he understood. Daniel realized teaching others helped him learn even more. At school, not everyone was kind. A few students still doubted him. One day, a student joked that Daniel only got attention because of one lucky moment. Daniel felt the words sting, but he stayed calm. He remembered how far he had come since that day. Instead of arguing, Daniel focused on his work. Over time, results spoke louder than words. Tests, projects, and group work showed his consistency. Slowly, the doubts faded. The principal invited Daniel to speak at a small school meeting about learning challenges and confidence. Daniel was nervous, but he agreed. Standing in front of teachers and students, he shared his story in simple words. He spoke about being underestimated and about staying prepared even when others do not expect much. The room listened quietly. Some teachers nodded. Some students looked thoughtful. Daniel finished by saying everyone deserves a chance to show what they can do. After the meeting, several students thanked him. One said his words helped her believe in herself. Daniel realized his story was helping others, not just himself. That night, Daniel sat at his desk and opened one of his old math books. He smiled, remembering how far he had come. The pages no longer felt like a secret he had to hide. The joke that once tried to limit him had become a turning point. And Daniel knew there was still more ahead. By the middle of the school year, Daniel's name was becoming familiar in many classrooms. Teachers spoke of him with respect, not because of one moment, but because of steady effort. He showed up prepared, asked thoughtful questions, and helped others without acting superior. Daniel learned that growth was not loud. It happened slowly through small choices each day. One afternoon, the school announced an upcoming regional math challenge. It was open to selected students from different grades. Mr. Harris suggested Daniel's name during a staff meeting. This time, there was no hesitation. Other teachers agreed. When Daniel was invited to participate, he felt both excited and nervous. He had never competed before. He worried about being judged again, but he remembered the lesson he had already learned. Preparation mattered more than opinions. He trained quietly. After school, he stayed in the library solving problems, reading explanations, and correcting his mistakes. Sometimes he struggled for hours on a single question. Instead of giving up, he took breaks, returned, and tried again. At home, Daniel's mother supported him in simple ways. She made sure he had time to study. She asked how he was feeling, not just how he was performing. Her calm belief helped him stay balanced. The day of the math challenge arrived. The room was large and unfamiliar. Students from other schools filled the seats. Some looked confident, some looked tense. Daniel sat quietly, breathing slowly. When the challenge began, Daniel focused only on the paper in front of him. The problems were hard but clear. He moved step by step, just like he always did. When time ended, he felt satisfied, not because he was sure of winning, but because he had done his best. Weeks later, results were announced at a school assembly. Daniel listened as names were called. When his name was mentioned among the top performers, the room erupted in applause. Daniel felt his face warm, but he walked forward calmly. The principal shook his hand and praised his dedication. She said his success showed what happens when students are given fair chances. Daniel returned to his seat, heart full. After the assembly, several students approached him. Some asked for help with math. Others said his story inspired them. Daniel realized his journey was becoming bigger than himself. Mr. Harris spoke to him later that day. He said he was proud, not just of Daniel's skill, but of his character. He admitted that his early mistake had taught him an important lesson as a teacher. Daniel thanked him. He felt no anger anymore, only understanding. Still, Daniel stayed grounded. He continued helping classmates. He continued learning. He did not chase attention. He chased understanding. One evening, Daniel wrote in his notebook about his experiences. He wrote about the day at the board, the silence, the change, and the growth. Writing helped him see how one moment could shape many others. Daniel understood now that success was not about proving others wrong. It was about believing in yourself even when no one is watching. The student once called forward as a joke was now moving forward with purpose. and the final chapters of his story were still unfolding. As the school year moved closer to its end, Daniel began to notice something important. The change was no longer only about him. The classrooms felt different. Teachers asked more questions. Students felt safer raising their hands. Mistakes were treated as part of learning, not something to laugh at. Daniel's success had quietly shifted the tone of the school. One afternoon, Daniel was asked to tutor younger students after school. At first, he was unsure. He had never seen himself as a leader, but he agreed, remembering how patient guidance had helped him grow. The tutoring room was small and bright. A few students sat around a table looking nervous. Daniel smiled gently and asked what they found difficult. As they explained, he listened carefully. He did not rush them. He remembered how it felt to stand at the board under pressure. He explained math in simple steps, using examples from daily life. Slowly, the students relaxed. When one student solved a problem on their own, Daniel celebrated quietly. Their confidence grew, and so did his. Teachers noticed how calm and supportive he was. They saw that his strength was not only in solving problems, but in helping others believe they could solve them too. At home, Daniel talked more about the future. He began thinking about careers, colleges, and possibilities he once thought were out of reach. His mother listened and reminded him to take one step at a time. One evening, Daniel received an email from the counselor. It said he had been nominated for a student leadership award. The award was not for grades alone, but for character and positive influence. Daniel felt surprised and honored. The award ceremony was simple. When Daniel's name was called, he walked to the stage calmly. The counselor spoke about his quiet determination and how he changed the environment around him. The audience listened closely. Daniel thanked everyone and returned to his seat. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like himself growing. After the ceremony, a teacher approached Daniel and said, "Your story reminded us why we teach." Those words stayed with him. Daniel also faced challenges. Balancing advanced classes, tutoring, and personal time was not easy. Some days he felt tired and unsure. On those days, he rested, reflected, and kept going. He learned that strength included knowing when to pause. Near the end of the year, Daniel was invited to speak to a group of new teachers. He shared his experience in simple words. He talked about how small moments could shape students deeply. He encouraged teachers to see potential before making assumptions. The room was quiet as he spoke. Some teachers took notes. Some nodded. Daniel realized his voice mattered. Walking home later, Daniel thought about the day that started it all. The joke, the board, the silence. He no longer felt pain from it. He felt growth. He understood now that respect could be taught, and fairness could be learned. And as the school year ended, Daniel stood ready for the future, not because someone finally noticed him, but because he never stopped believing in himself. Only one part of his journey remained. As the school year moved closer to its end, Daniel began to notice something important. The change was no longer only about him. The classrooms felt different. Teachers asked more questions. Students felt safer raising their hands. Mistakes were treated as part of learning, not something to laugh at. Daniel's success had quietly shifted the tone of the school. One afternoon, Daniel was asked to tutor younger students after school. At first, he was unsure. He had never seen himself as a leader, but he agreed, remembering how patient guidance had helped him grow. The tutoring room was small and bright. A few students sat around a table looking nervous. Daniel smiled gently and asked what they found difficult. As they explained, he listened carefully. He did not rush them. He remembered how it felt to stand at the board under pressure. He explained math in simple steps, using examples from daily life. Slowly, the students relaxed. When one student solved a problem on their own, Daniel celebrated quietly. Their confidence grew, and so did his. Teachers noticed how calm and supportive he was. They saw that his strength was not only in solving problems, but in helping others believe they could solve them too. At home, Daniel talked more about the future. He began thinking about careers, colleges, and possibilities he once thought were out of reach. His mother listened and reminded him to take one step at a time. One evening, Daniel received an email from the counselor. It said he had been nominated for a student leadership award. The award was not for grades alone, but for character and positive influence. Daniel felt surprised and honored. The award ceremony was simple. When Daniel's name was called, he walked to the stage calmly. The counselor spoke about his quiet determination and how he changed the environment around him. The audience listened closely. Daniel thanked everyone and returned to his seat. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like himself growing. After the ceremony, a teacher approached Daniel and said, "Your story reminded us why we teach." Those words stayed with him. Daniel also faced challenges. Balancing advanced classes, tutoring, and personal time was not easy. Some days he felt tired and unsure. On those days, he rested, reflected, and kept going. He learned that strength included knowing when to pause. Near the end of the year, Daniel was invited to speak to a group of new teachers. He shared his experience in simple words. He talked about how small moments could shape students deeply. He encouraged teachers to see potential before making assumptions. The room was quiet as he spoke. Some teachers took notes. Some nodded. Daniel realized his voice mattered. Walking home later, Daniel thought about the day that started it all, the joke, the board, the silence. He no longer felt pain from it. He felt growth. He understood now that respect could be taught, and fairness could be learned. And as the school year ended, Daniel stood ready for the future, not because someone finally noticed him, but because he never stopped believing in himself. Only one part of his journey remained. The final days of school arrived quietly. The halls were filled with mixed feelings. Some students were excited for break. Others felt nervous about change. Daniel walked through the building slowly, taking in every sound and moment. This place had shaped him more than he ever expected. On the last day of math class, Mr. Harris stood at the front of the room and looked around. He thanked the students for their hard work. Before the bell rang, he paused and said there was one more thing he wanted to say. He spoke about growth. He spoke about learning from mistakes. He said teachers were still learning too. Then he looked at Daniel and nodded. It was a quiet moment, but everyone understood its meaning. Daniel packed his bag and walked out of the classroom for the last time that year. The room that once made him feel small now felt like a place where he belonged. Later that day, the principal stopped Daniel in the hallway. She handed him a letter. Inside was confirmation that he had been accepted into a summer learning program focused on math and science. It was challenging and competitive. Daniel read the letter twice, just to be sure. When he told his mother that evening, she held the letter gently and smiled. She said she was proud of him, not only for what he achieved, but for how he carried himself through it all. They celebrated in a simple way, with dinner and laughter. Over the summer, Daniel worked hard. The program introduced him to students from different places, all with different stories. Some were confident. Some were quiet like he once was. Daniel listened, learned, and shared when needed. He realized something important. Many students carried hidden talents just like he did. They only needed a chance to show them. One afternoon during the program, a teacher asked Daniel to explain a solution to the group. As he stood there, Daniel remembered the first time he stood at a board. The fear was gone now. In its place was calm confidence. He explained clearly. The group understood. The moment felt full, like a circle closing. At the end of summer, Daniel returned to school for a new year. He walked in with a steady step. He was no longer the student in the back row. He was not defined by one moment, good or bad. He was defined by consistency, kindness, and effort. New students joined the school that year. Daniel noticed one student sitting quietly in the back of a class just like he once did. During a group activity, Daniel invited him to join. The student looked surprised, then thankful. Daniel understood now that real success meant lifting others as you grow. The story that began as a joke had become a lesson shared by many. Teachers became more careful with their words. Students became more open with their support. The school became a better place, one step at a time. Daniel never forgot where it started, but he did not let it limit where he was going. He learned that respect is earned through actions, not assumptions. He learned that talent grows when given trust, and he learned that believing in yourself can change everything. This was not just the end of a school year. It was the beginning of a future filled with possibility.